This could be then above ground or below ground. Lots of times these laterals, for example, we're out here in Milton Freewater. Those of you that are familiar with the area, drive over to Milton Freewater and you look at the ground and it looks like a rock garden. It's a riverbed with a little soil mixed in. You know, there's a little soil in between those rocks. Well, they can grow heck a good orchard and vineyard out there, but it's a misery to try to put pipe underground. And so they oftentimes will run the laterals. The laterals will be above ground. They'll lay it right on the surface. Now, material-wise, now we're looking at maybe another look. Instead of going to PVC, maybe we want to go to poly. Now, poly is black plastic, but it's semi-flexible. It has carbon black mixed into the plastic polymer that acts as an ultraviolet ray inhibitor. So it doesn't deteriorate when you put it on the surface like PVC does. When PVC gets hit with sunlight, it breaks down due to ultraviolet ray interaction with the molecules in the polymer. Well, it deflects off with that. They put carbon black in the pipe for poly, and that when it hits those carbon particles, it deflects the ultraviolet rays off of the pipe so it doesn't deteriorate the pipe. And it's a little flexible, so you could even drive over it and maybe not damage it. It might or it might not. Oftentimes it won't. So poly on the surface can work. But you'll even see them put PVC on the surface. And they just take their chances. They say, hey, it's going to last 15, 20 years if I don't drive over it. And by then the system will be obsolete, and I can't afford to bury it in all that rock. And so they'll just put it above ground plastic, PVC. Now you can also buy PVC that does have ultraviolet ray inhibitors in it. More expensive, obviously, but it is available. So these laterals could be of different material, and they could be buried or they could be on the surface. Now the norm is to bury it. Get it underground so that it's out of the way of all of the field operations. You know, you got tractors driving through there all the time spraying. You got pickers in there. You got, in the spring, you got thinners. In the winter, you got pruners. A lot of ladders being packed around through that orchard. A lot of opportunity for the pipe to get damaged. So ideally what they try to do is bury it. Get out of the way, and the only thing coming up out of the ground is a riser with the sprinkler on it. So then all you have to worry about is some breaking off the sprinklers or breaking the risers off so that you have a little problem then. But those laterals are not going to be near as big a pipe because we're not going to have the flow rates in them. And especially when we get into the smaller and smaller micro systems, the biggest we might have is 1 inch on a lateral. Then poly starts to look like a pretty good option. We get into true drip, we're going to see the same look in true drip, and we're going to see that we might be down as little as 3/4 or even 1/2 inch tubing right on the surface. We also then, at the end of the laterals, have to have a way of occasionally flushing these systems. So they, you know, all the debris always keeps working its way to the end of the end of the end. And eventually, you get out here to the end of the lateral, and you're going to have all of the silt that's in the pipe accumulate toward the end. So there has to be a way to flush the ends of the laterals. So oftentimes they will come up out of the last, where the last sprinkler is, be able to put a gate valve or a ball valve, some kind of a valve that will on-off, thread the last riser off and just open that valve wide open and let it blow. Now the only way you can flush a line effectively is to get enough velocity in that line so that it'll agitate the debris that's in the pipe. If it just flows out at a slow speed, you're not going to bring any of that debris that's settled in the bottom of that pipe out with it. So you have to have a big enough opening so that you're running a high velocity, at least 8 feet per second type of velocities, to get enough agitation to agitate that silt that's been collecting in that pipe. With that little sprinkler running, maybe it's only putting out, like I said, maybe in our example, 2.5 gallons a minute. And we've sized that pipe, and maybe it's a 3/4 inch pipe running there, and so the velocity coming down that pipe might only be 2 or 3 feet per second. Well, we got to get 8 or 10 gallons a minute blowing through there to get the velocity up enough to agitate the debris that's been collecting in the bottom of the pipe. So we want to have a big enough standpipe coming up out of there for a riser, be able to open a valve that's going to allow us to flow at least 8 or 10 gallons a minute. So we just bring a 3/4 inch pipe up, and that'll do the job. Whatever the size of the pipe coming to the end, we put that pipe stand coming up as a standard out the last sprinkler, put a valve on it. Occasionally we have to unthread that pipe off of that valve and blow that line out if we have dirty water. Now there's lots of conditions out there. We have very good water, and we don't have to fight that battle. Or we might have a very good filtration system up at the beginning of the system, especially when we get into microsystems, where we don't have to worry about flushing the system too much. But you always want to have that ability to do that.